As the air filled with the rich, mouth-watering scent of roasted chicken and sweet potatoes, laughter broke through my wall of discomfort. Gwendolyn Evans raised her glass and fixed her gaze right on me. "I hope I never end up like her, single with a kid," she said, unleashing a wave of laughter that crashed into me like a cold wave. A visceral, cutting laughter. It felt like everyone had just declared a verdict on my life. My Uncle Mark clapped the table, adding, "Men don't want used goods. That's just how it is." Even my mother joined in with a chuckle as she poured more wine. Frozen in place, I felt my cheeks blaze. My heart raced. The judgment in their eyes felt like arrows. Just when I thought I'd escape this nightmare unnoticed, the atmosphere shifted. Liam Carter, Gwendolyn Evans' fiancé, rose from his seat. He didn't smile. He took his time, walking toward me as the buzzing laughter faded into an eerie silence. All eyes turned his way, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. What was he about to say? Was he about to tear down this facade? Or were we all just going to float away in this ocean of judgment? A month earlier, I had received the invitation. Cream-colored cardstock, gold lettering, everything about it screamed excessive. Join us to celebrate the engagement of Gwendolyn Evans and Liam Carter. I'd stared at it for what felt like hours before shoving it aside, right next to a pile of overdue bills, overwhelmed by memories of a summer baby shower. That day, Gwendolyn Evans had delivered another sting, joking about my life choices. "Collecting diapers and bad decisions," she had said, and I forced a laugh to keep the peace, but it sat heavy in my gut. The thought of spending an evening surrounded by those who saw me as a cautionary tale filled me with dread. I'm 32, raising my son alone, juggling 2 jobs and barely holding on with freelance gigs and prayers. I almost bailed, but my mom called me 3 times the day before. "Just smile, Soraya. Eat a little, show your face." I knew what this meant. Don't stir the pot or make anyone awkward. Blend in. So, I pulled out the best dress I had, the only one that barely zipped over my anxious heart. Would tonight be a night of acceptance? Or just another reminder of how lonely I felt in a crowded room? As I stepped into the room, it felt like someone flipped a switch, plunging me into an electric atmosphere. The air buzzed with forced laughter and glances that sliced through the dim light. I had borrowed shoes from my neighbor and let Milo pick a necklace. A little silver heart, a mirror of his. But as I surveyed the luxurious space, expensive wines practically flaunting themselves, my anxiety tightened like a noose around my chest. Gwendolyn Evans, all fitted silk and over-the-top perfume, glided my way. "I'm so glad you came," she said, her smile a carefully crafted mask. "Did you bring a +1?" she added, her eyes already wandering off. "Just Milo," I replied while she whisked away to flatter someone else. My son was dispatched to the kids' table, armed with a coloring book and chicken tenders. The long white draped table felt like a gauntlet as I took my seat between my mother and Aunt Valerie, who was too eager to show off snapshots of her dog's Halloween costumes. My Uncle Mark Thompson was 3 drinks in, and my mom was trying her hardest to blend into the background. Across the room, Liam Carter appeared, swallowed by his own discomfort, checking his phone as if hoping it held the key to an escape. But Gwendolyn Evans? She was a star in her own show, soaking up the attention with her rehearsed charm. The moment the appetizers arrived, my mother leaned in, whispering, "Just keep your head down. You look nice." Nice. A simple word that hung in the air, heavy like a lead weight. I could almost hear the clock ticking, each second reminding me that I was merely a shadow at this gathering, slipping into invisibility. I feigned enjoyment, forced out small talks, and joined the shared laughter, all the while bracing myself for the judgmental looks that smoldered beneath the surface. A distant voice echoed in the back of my mind, but just when I thought I could hold my breath a bit longer, The atmosphere shifted again. A wave of laughter crashed into me, razor sharp. Men don't want used goods. That's just how it is. My Uncle Mark's voice resonated like a thunderclap. Even my mother let out a chuckle, fueling my shame. Suddenly, the laughter washed over me, mocking, like a cold wave pulling me under. As I tightened my grip on the silver heart necklace, anxiety surged. All eyes turned to Liam Carter as he rose from his seat. The air turned electric with questions. What would he say? Would he defend me, challenge the status quo, or dissolve into the tide of embarrassment? I held my breath. Would I let Gwendolyn Evans, now Gwendolyn Evans, dictate my worth, or would I stand tall against the storm? The world paused, and in that heartbeat, everything hung in the balance. When the last plates were whisked away and glasses topped off, Gwendolyn rose, champagne in hand, fork clinking against crystal. Silence swept through the crowd like a cover of night. I braced myself. Would it be a sentimental toast? Warm thanks, maybe a cringeworthy joke or two about love and wedding plans. But then the unexpected hit. Gwendolyn beamed as if she were the sun taking center stage. Liam sat next to her, his silence heavy, hands neatly folded, eyes darting momentarily to me. He looked drained, like he'd already fought too many battles tonight. Gwendolyn began, "Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I can't believe I'm marrying someone like Liam. He's patient, he's smart, and honestly, he puts up with me." Laughter cascaded through the room, rich and liberating. But then she leaned in, voice dripping with sweetness. "But really, I hope our marriage lasts. I'd hate to end up like some people." She let that linger a moment, turning her gaze to me, eyes dancing with a smirk. I mean, single at 30 with a kid. Her laughter sliced through the air, and the room erupted. Not just small giggles, but whooping, gasping laughter. My heart pounded like a drum roll. I felt like I was drowning in a wave of scorn. Mark Thompson, already 3 drinks in, slapped the table, wheezing in his frenzy to tell his joke. Men don't want used goods. That's just how it is. You can't trade in a dented car and expect full price. A hollow pit opened inside me. I glanced at my mother, whose weak smile was barely visible over the rim of her wine glass. I wanted nothing more than to evaporate into thin air. I focused on my empty plate, the cloth napkin crumpling in my desperate grip. Every eye flicked my way, sampling my turmoil without really confronting it, validating the mockery instead. I was the punchline, the living embodiment of Gwendolyn's jest. And just a few feet away, my son, Milo, blissfully doodled a spaceship on a napkin, blissfully ignorant of the storm brewing around me. As laughter echoed through the air, Soraya's expression turned steely. Gwendolyn Evans' snide remarks hung over her like a dense fog, distorting the reality of her mother's struggles. A surge of rage bubbled inside her, transforming Soraya's insecurity into a fierce determination. Just then, a figure stepped from the shadows. Her mother, pale and shaken, had overheard everything. The room fell quiet, an electric tension sparking as unspoken truths prickled in the air. Soraya's heartbeat quickened, a mix of fear and newfound courage flooding her veins. Would she confront the messy truth now, as the embarrassment clawed at her throat? He didn't realize they were tearing into his mother, treating her like a thrift shop find. Aunt Valerie leaned closer, whispering, "Oh, honey, she didn't mean it. Gwendolyn Evans just craves the spotlight." It was more than attention. It was venom poured into a champagne flute, disguised as mirth. Soraya straightened up, determined to mask her flinch. Her cheeks felt like they were on fire. Her heart raced, a drum echoing above the ambient tunes. Another look at Liam revealed a steadfast silence, his hands clenched, jaw tight. He wasn't laughing. Gwendolyn Evans pressed on, unfazed, cracking more jokes. She recalled how she'd made Liam ditch his gaming console, bragging he'd be lost without her. The laughter waned. Murmurs flitted through the crowd, some people looking awkward. Soraya's mother fidgeted, glancing everywhere but at her daughter. That stifling quiet was the worst. Nobody spoke up. It was easy to laugh at the woman who didn't fit their mold, the one who had a kid without a partner, the one who walked in alone. Soraya wrestled with her thoughts. Should she rise, grab Milo, and unleash the truth? Something like, "At least I raised a kind human while you were still seeking likes for validation." But the words stayed lodged in her throat. Instead, she swallowed her fire, watching the heat creep up toward her ears. She inhaled deeply, reminding herself it was just one night. Soon, she'd be home, tucking Milo in and letting go of these judgmental faces. Then Liam stood up. Silence fell like a curtain. No one moved. He pushed his chair back, walked around the table. Every gaze turned, anticipation electric. Gwendolyn Evans blinked, her confidence cracking. Soraya's mother focused on the floor, the tension rising as Liam made his way to her side. The atmosphere constricted, like the air had been vacuumed out. Would he be her hero tonight? He glanced from me to the table of judgmental faces I could barely call family. Then he spoke, breaking the silence like a rock dropped into a calm lake. "I think they should know something." The air stilled. No silverware clinked, no nervous laughter pierced the tension. Gwendolyn Evans' eyes widened, unsure if this was part of her so-called show. My Uncle Mark lowered his drink while my mother finally shifted her attention from avoiding me. I felt trapped, breath knocked out like the wind had been sucked from the room. Liam stood beside me, not hiding behind the table anymore. His jaw was clenched tight, but his presence brought a spark of hope. I braced for another layer of humiliation. Was he going to side with them? But then I looked into his eyes. Not pity or shame, but something fierce, something real. He turned to the room, anchoring us all with his calm, steady voice. "I can't just sit here and let this continue." His words hung in the air, inviting the silence to listen. Gwendolyn Evans' smirk faded. "That wasn't just a joke," Liam asserted. "That was cruel." She opened her mouth, probably to defend herself, but he raised his hand to cut her off. "I need to say this," he continued, his gaze shifting through the crowd. "You all laugh at Soraya like she's some kind of failure, but what you refuse to see is that she's the strongest person here." My heart raced. 20 pairs of eyes flicked toward me. I shrank into myself. But Liam held his ground. 2 years ago, I was at one of the lowest points in my life. Soraya didn't just offer job leads or encouragement. She gave me her time, her energy, her kindness. The weight of his words hit harder than any laughter. Each confession swept over me like a warm wave, washing away the bitterness I thought I'd have to carry forever. Would this moment of solidarity last, or would they find a way to twist it against me? Those smiles around the table turned to frowns, and for the first time, I sensed vulnerability beneath their armor. Liam took a step closer, his unwavering support lighting up the suffocating gloom around us. Could this be the shift I had hoped for? Did he really mean every word, or would Gwendolyn's relentless judgment shatter his courage just like the fragile piece of the night that seemed so precarious? The silence hung thick, anticipation crackling like a summer storm about to break. The atmosphere felt electric, thick with tension as I stood there, uncertain. Surprise washed over me when Liam defended me, turning the laughter that usually stung like needles into a shield of strength. I remember the damp scent of rain wafting in through the open window, mingling with the stale tension clinging to the air. "You know how hard she fought just to be seen," he said, fire igniting in his voice. My heart raced. All those eyes. They flicked my way, some softening with shame, while others narrowed with disdain. But Liam kept going, his voice steady like a lighthouse in the storm. Remembering my downward spiral after losing my job, he laid bare the truth. I was in dark waters, he confessed, directing a fierce look at Gwendolyn Evans. But Soraya, she pulled me back to the surface. No questions asked. I could feel disbelief knotting my chest. Did he really see me? The room fell silent, the weight of his words pressing down on us all. Gwendolyn Evans' smile melted away, replaced with a mask of annoyance. "What's this? A pity party?" she sneered, oozing her typical scorn. But Liam stepped closer, his bravado cutting through her venom. "No, it's honesty," he shot back. "You think you're above her. Your jokes don't just hurt, they shame someone who's fought tooth and nail to rise again." Gwendolyn's gaze burned into him, ready to strike back, but for once the laughter around us had dimmed. My uncle shifted awkwardly. My mother went pale. Was this really happening? A glimmer of hope flickered within me, ignited by his fierce honesty. I wanted to say something, but my throat tightened from emotion. A silent nod was all I could muster. In a room teeming with family, I still felt invisible, until Liam made sure I was seen. Would this moment of validation last, or would Gwendolyn's icy judgment snuff out the warmth? The silence thickened like fog, anticipation swirling, an unbreakable stillness saturated with unspoken truths as I awaited whatever would come next. Right there when it mattered. The atmosphere shifted, thick and charged with an electricity that sent shivers down my spine. I wasn't shrinking in my chair anymore. No one moved. The room held its breath, suspended in an awkward silence after Liam had spoken. The hum of the overhead lights buzzed like a warning, and somewhere in the kitchen, a server dropped a tray, clattering like heartbeats ready to explode. Gwendolyn Evans stood frozen, her eyes fixed on Liam as if he'd slapped her across the face. Her cheeks flushed, not with embarrassment, but a seething rage. Her gaze darted across the table, desperate for an ally, someone to snatch the spotlight back. But no one dared to break the silence. Uncle Mark shifted in his chair, finally mumbling, "He's just emotional. Don't take it so seriously." Liam didn't flinch. His intensity remained locked on the room. "You want to talk about emotion? Fine. Let's talk about what it takes to raise a kid on your own, to juggle 2 jobs, to show up for someone when it's not convenient. That's not emotion. That's strength." Gwendolyn Evans crossed her arms, a defensive wall she thought would shield her. "Are you trying to say you have feelings for her?" Liam shot her a look of disbelief as if he was staring at a ghost. "I'm saying I admire her. I respect her. Maybe if you spent less time performing perfection and more time listening, you'd get why that matters." His words landed hard, shaking the very foundation of the facade Gwendolyn Evans had built. It wasn't just my battle anymore. It was about truth. It was about finally naming the polite cruelty that those around us clung to like security blankets. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at me, a flicker of guilt in her eyes, recognition dawning that perhaps she had failed me too. For years, she had whispered the same old mantras. Keep quiet, forgive, smile through it all. But now, maybe she was finally seeing how much that silence had suffocated me. I didn't expect an apology, but this wave of acknowledgement felt monumental. But then, a moment of tension would always precede the storm. How would Gwendolyn Evans retaliate? The silence thickened like fog, swirling with unspoken words, as we all awaited whatever twist was about to unravel next. The overhead lights flickered ominously, buzzing like an electric storm on the horizon. In the kitchen, a tray clattered to the ground. It was loud, a warning shot that shattered the tense silence hanging in the air. All eyes were glued to Liam. His defiance felt like cold water splashed on Gwendolyn Evans' fiery rage. She looked like she'd been slapped, her cheeks burning with an anger palpable enough to cut through the atmosphere. As the room held its breath, even Uncle Mark mumbled a weak defense for her, his voice trembling. "He's just emotional. Don't take it so seriously." But Liam stood firm, eyes locked on the crowd as if daring them to challenge him. "You want to talk about emotions? Let's discuss what it means to raise a kid on your own. Juggling 2 jobs and still showing up for someone when it's not easy? That's not just emotion. That's strength." The intensity of his gaze shifted the energy in the room. Gwendolyn Evans crossed her arms, her setup for battle. "Are you saying you have feelings for her?" Liam's disbelief was a storm cloud, thunderous and shocking. "No, I admire her, respect her. Maybe if you focus less on perfect images and more on understanding people, you'd get why that matters." His words hit like a wrecking ball, rattling the carefully constructed walls around Gwendolyn Evans' facade. I watched as my mother's expression changed. The disapproval in her eyes faded into something softer, a twinkle of guilt flickering like a candle in the night. For years, she'd taught me the power of silence and the art of wearing a smile, but even she seemed to see the smothering nature of it all. I didn't expect her to apologize, but something monumental cracked within her, a wave of recognition splashing over each of us. But something about silence always precedes the storm. I felt an unsettling energy brewing as we braced for Gwendolyn Evans' retaliation. Just then, everything shifted. Not from Gwendolyn Evans, not from Mark Thompson, not even from my mother, I thought, standing there poised against the tide of judgment. I didn't need redemption, yet I could feel something crack open. Then Liam faced me fully, radiating protection. "You deserve better than this," he said. I met his gaze, unwavering. Not this time. With steady hands, I rose. The table felt miles away, each person a character from a dull story I was breaking free from, defining me by a singular mistake that somehow eclipsed a lifetime of choices. I caught sight of Gwendolyn Evans, silent yet seething, my mother finally at a loss for words, and Mark Thompson, trying to brush off the tension with another sip of wine. Fear had no place in me now. Glancing at Milo, still innocently drawing spaceships, brought a smile to my face. "I think we're going to head out," I announced, not seeking permission. I walked over, gathered his crayons, and picked up his messy but heartfelt drawing of a rocket soaring toward a sun with uneven rays. He handed it to me like it was a treasure. "Did you have fun, baby?" I asked. He nodded. "Are we going home?" "Yes," I assured him. "We are." As I made my way to the door, Liam stepped back. He gave me a slight nod as I passed, a silent affirmation that said, "You are seen. You matter. You have every right to stand tall." When I turned for one last look, the mood was different. Gwendolyn Evans sat rigid, lips pressed tight, Mark Thompson scrolling his phone as if the world hadn't shifted, and my mother stared into her glass, fingers trembling ever so slightly. I didn't need an apology. I didn't crave approval. I had spoken my truth just by standing there, by refusing to shrink away, to sneak out in shame. Liam Carter stood strong by my side, backing my truth for everyone to witness. And that alone was more than enough. I opened the door, and Milo slipped his hand into mine. We left together, steady, unshaken. The night air felt different the moment we stepped outside. Not colder, just cleaner, lighter, like the weight I'd been carrying for years had finally lifted. Not because someone took it from me, but because I stopped pretending it was mine to carry. Milo skipped ahead a little on the sidewalk, humming as he waved his drawing in the air like a flag. I watched him and thought about what it had taken to raise a boy who was still joyful, still full of light, even when his mother had walked through fire to keep that light alive. I used to see my life through the lens of what I had lost. The relationship that didn't last, the family who never understood, the security I gave up when I chose to have a child alone. For years, I let their voices tell me what I was worth. I absorbed their disappointment. I wore their judgment like it was mine to fix. But walking out of that room, hand in hand with my son, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not pride, just clarity. They weren't laughing anymore because someone finally told the truth. Not the story they built around me, but the story I actually lived. I didn't need a man to validate me. I didn't need my family's approval to make my life real. I needed honesty. I needed someone to say out loud that I was more than the worst version of their assumptions. Liam Carter didn't fix me. He didn't rescue me. What he did was more powerful. He saw me, and in doing that, he gave the rest of the room no choice but to see me too. That moment wasn't just about defending me. It was about breaking a cycle. The kind that tells women they are only valuable if they come with the right packaging. The kind that calls mothers selfish for being alone. The kind that labels strength as failure if it comes without a ring. My mother texted me later that night. One sentence. I'm sorry, it didn't undo anything, but it was something, a crack in the wall. As Soraya gazes into the mirror, the dim light revealing every complex emotion, she feels vulnerable. Yet, lurking just beneath the surface is the shadow of Gwendolyn, a relentless whisper in the back of her mind. The air is thick with unspoken words, lavender from her calming diffuser, wafting like a protective blanket amidst the stale remnants of the evening's drama. A sudden rustling from Milo's room sends a chill down her spine. What if he heard Gwendolyn's biting remarks? What if he processed their weight? She tries to dismiss the thought, but just then her phone pings. A surprise from Gwendolyn, laced with sarcasm. All the defenses she built up suddenly feel fragile. Is this a war of wills or a veiled plea for connection? That night shifted everything for Soraya. She didn't need Gwendolyn's apology. She realized her worth wasn't tied to the judgment of others. Once she reached home, she tucked Milo in, his sleepy smile a reminder of all the sacrifices she made. He didn't prattle on about dinner or her newfound glow. Instead, he curled into his blankets and whispered, "I love you," before drifting off. In that silence, Soraya reflected on every moment she wished to blend into the walls, to be invisible and smaller so as not to draw attention, not to become the subject of scorn. No more. Years of walking this path alone taught her a vital truth. She needn't apologize for surviving. She raised a bright, sweet child. Through grit and grace, she crafted a life filled with love, even when the world seemed indifferent. If anyone dared to mock her again, she wouldn't retreat. Instead, she'd do what she did that fateful night. She would stand tall, lock eyes with the naysayers, and walk away hand in hand with Milo, the living proof of her triumph. This isn't a story about perfection. It's about resilience. If you've ever felt like the punchline or whispered about behind a friendly smile, let this remind you, you are not used goods. You are not too late. You are enough just as you are. Healing starts when you stop hiding your truth. This moment is for you. Keep it close. Reflect on your own strength, your worth, and those times when you stood your ground. Carry that courage with you. It's yours to keep. In a dimly lit cafe, Soraya stands up, her hands trembling as she scans the room. The weight of judgment hangs heavy, like burnt coffee in the air. But today, she's ready to fight. Liam's steady, encouraging nod fuels her determination. She faces Gwendolyn Evans, the queen of snark, and shatters the silence. "Why do we let her define us?" she asks, her voice stronger than it's ever been. Outside, Philadelphia buzzes, but inside, a tense moment sparks. Tears glimmer in Gwendolyn's eyes, a crack in her facade. In that instant, Soraya feels the warmth of acceptance embrace her. No more hiding. This isn't just Soraya's story. It's yours. If you felt like a wallflower, know you're not alone. Your worth isn't what others say. Stand up, own your space, and watch how the world shifts around you. This is a tale of resilience, a reminder that healing begins when you embrace your truth. You deserve to take up space. You deserve to start fresh. You're doing better than you think, and today is just the beginning.